Protesters in Cardwell have joined the ALP Townsville branch and others opposed to any potential development of Hinchinbrook Island. Expressions of interest have been called for eco-tourist operators to work in the Hinchinbrook Island area, the Whitsundays and the Great Sandy National Parks. But the Minister for Tourist Industry Development, Kate Jones, is dismissing some of the fears and concerns that people have around the potential environmental impact.
Look, we've said from day one that we want to see ecotourism in Queensland. This isn't a new announcement. This is something we have been talking about for more than a decade here in Queensland. So I say very clearly that Tasmania has demonstrated that you can build popular ecotourism experiences in a sustainable way. That's why we've seen more than a 27% growth in Tasmanian tourism. And quite frankly, I'm very confident that the work that we are doing with the tourism industry can see new ecotourism infrastructure in the region delivered sustainably. This is part of the reason why we asked Brett Godfrey to come on as the chair of Tours and Events Queensland, because of his hands-on experience in delivering these same experiences in Tasmania. I'm very confident that the guidelines we have in place, the framework we have in place, will see us deliver this new tourism eco experience in a sustainable way. The Labor Party is a very broad church, but at least we all vote together.
So that was Kate Jones, and that question that you couldn't quite make out, is it a little embarrassing that members of your own party are opposed to this? And of course that was in reference to the ALP branch in Townsville, saying it was opposed to the development of Hinchinbrook Island, and they're not the only ones in North Queensland. David Castles is a retired natural resources and parks specialist. He lives at Nellie Bay on Magnetic Island, but is strongly opposed to the development of Hinchinbrook Island, and he's here to share his reasoning with us now. Good afternoon, David Castles.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Good. So why are you opposed to what the government is proposing here?
Well, I guess it really comes back down to what national parks are and their role in supporting tourism. And, Queensland for many, many years had a policy of essentially locating tourist facilities outside national parks. I guess the iconic ones we all know about are things like Binnaburra and O'Reilly, some of the very early ones. And the idea was that they'd be located near the park, but not in the park. Around the world, this issue has been looked at many, many times. I guess the experience of park services in many places, as soon as you allow private commercial activities within the national parks, inevitably it's the private commercial interests, even if it's orientated towards ecotourism, their profitability will become the management driver rather than the principle of conserving the environment that the ecotourism is hopefully highlighting. So it's really a question of where's the tail and where's the dog. No one's opposed to the development of ecotourism. It's just about where that development is appropriate. And I guess the global experience has been that it's better if those sorts of facilities are located outside national parks.
Well, the department assures local mayors that any tourism development would be in the shape of guided walking tours, a what you take in must come out basis. Why wouldn't that work?
Well, certainly if I think a guided tour, there's plenty of that going on in North Queensland now. You don't have to build privately owned facilities in national parks to do that. I think the other thing is that we have an existing trail there. It's an iconic trail. It's known around the world, the Thorsborne Trail. And one of the reasons is that it is undeveloped. As soon as you allow even limited facilities in there, in the form of overnight cabins and things like that, the nature of that trail changes, and I think Queensland will actually lose an incredible tourist attraction that brings people to the region, simply because even if people don't walk that trail, they know that it's there. I think the other thing is that the Tasmanian experience is that it eventually becomes something that only the very rich can afford. I wanted to do the Bay of Fires walk a few years ago, and for a 3-day walk it was about $4,000. Now, I'm lucky I've had a fairly good career. I've retired reasonably comfortably, but I can't afford $4,000 for a 3-day walk. And I'm sure most normal people can't either. So it makes it very exclusive, and it becomes, basically the rich only can afford to get those experiences. And I don't think that's what national park management should be about.
You're hearing from David Castles, a retired natural resources and parks specialist living in Nellie Bay on Magnetic Island, but dead against any proposal for eco-tourism development on Hinchinbrook Island. Some might think, hang on, you live on an island yourself, David Castles, Magnetic Island, so isn't it a bit rich to be saying others shouldn't be allowed an opportunity to sleep on an island as well?
Absolutely not. You can sleep on Hinchinbrook Island if you get a permit and if you take your tent and go.
You got me there, but you know what I mean. I mean, actually stay in accommodation.
Yeah. I'm living in freehold land outside the national park in Magnetic Island. I don't sleep in the national park, but I walk in it every day. And that's precisely the point. You can locate facilities outside parks and people can still access parks. What you need is a system of parks where various grades are access available throughout the whole system so that everyone can get the benefits of exposure to natural environments, whether they're handicapped or not. But you can't put a handicap trail to every inch of every park. It's very important that we have some natural areas, some remote wild nature areas. In fact, the management plan for Hinchinbrook Island, which was adopted by the government only last year, has that as a key value. It doesn't mention anything about expanding accommodation. It does mention about tours and guided tours, and some of that activity I think is fine. But to go the next step and build accommodation that's exclusive, expensive, and brings the built environment into the natural area that you are trying to highlight, I think is counterproductive.
It is claimed that Queensland really does need to step up if it's going to compete with Tasmania. We've been bleeding tourists to Tasmania for a long time, and the suggestion is that really we do need to start offering better offerings when it comes to our national parks, because that seems to be what all the hype is around Tasmania. Why isn't the government on a winner here when it looks at its national park assets and thinks, well, these things compete with anything Tasmania has, we just need to make it accessible to more people?
Well, yeah, the ministers, well, not Kate Jones' ministerial website, but the Minister for Environment and Science, who the National Park Service now comes under, on their website, I checked it yesterday, their estimate is that national parks contribute something like $4.3 billion a year to tourist earnings in Queensland. That's the existing parks, and it's 28% of all tourist earnings in Queensland. That's a huge contribution. So to say it's not there and we're bleeding tourists to Tasmania, different environments, different attractions, but national parks are making a major contribution. The Barrier Reef, we all know the number of jobs that are dependent on that. There's tourist facilities not in national parks but adjoining national parks that are providing access to that. To say that parks aren't contributing to the economy is just a nonsense.
But they could be contributing more, could they not?
I believe a well-managed system will contribute more. If you take away things like the Thorsborne track, you've lost one element of your international competitiveness, an element that's increasingly rare. It's the knowledge of places like that that will bring people to the region. The Victorian government went through the same thing. When the last Liberal government came to Victoria, they, just like the Campbell-Newman government here, they said, we really need to open up our national parks so they can contribute more. When the Labor government came back, they basically said, look, that's the wrong way to go. And I'll just read something from their guidelines for leases within parks. Victorian government is working to encourage the growth of tourist industry across the state. Tourism is a significant contributor to the economy and to jobs for Victorians, particularly in regional areas, and national parks play an important role in nature-based tourism. However, rather than encouraging developments inside national parks, tourism development will be encouraged to be sited on private or other public land outside parks in locations that are more likely to provide economic benefits directly to regional towns. This is consistent with the worldwide trend for resorts and large-scale tourist development located outside national parks. So, Kate's collaborators or colleagues in Victoria are taking a different tack. I think they're taking the right tack.
Okay, well, on that note, we will end, David Castles, this conversation. You've certainly put forward your case for why you think it's not a good idea that this be progressed, and we'll have to wait to see what the government chooses to do now that expressions of interest have been called. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
David Castles with us. He is a retired natural resources and parks specialist from North Queensland. Yeah, expressions of interest out for eco-tourist operators who would potentially want to build something on Hinchinbrook Island or some of the Whitsunday Islands and the Great Sandy National Parks, causing a lot of consternation and polarising the community. We heard from two mayors that are responsible for Hinchinbrook Island last week saying they were fully supportive of this move, but there is plenty